E3 2021 is fast approaching, and despite the fact that it's going to be basically a digital-only event this year, I'm still hopeful that we'll see some really cool stuff. So I wanted to put out this small video just talking about some stuff that I hope to see and expect to see. And hey, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please go check out my other videos, and if you like what you see, consider subscribing to the channel. I'd really appreciate it, and it just gets smaller channels like mine seen by more people. And don't forget to check out Pyro Games. There will be a link in the description below if you want to go check them out. They're an online retro game seller here in the UK. And as always, I have a discount code for you. If you decide to buy anything, just type consoles only, all one word, all caps at the checkout to get 10% off your entire order. And quick disclaimer, the store is run by a friend of mine, but I receive absolutely no money or free games or any sort of kickback of any description. But with that out of the way, let's talk about E3 2021. And as I said before, yes, it is going to be an online digital event, which for most of us is pretty much what it's always been, right? You just stay home and watch it on your computer or your TV or whatever. But as I said in a previous video, I do want to cover E3 as best as I can, so I thought I'd just make this video roughly sort of about a month before the actual event, just to kind of talk about what we might see. So I think the first thing I'll talk about is something that I know a lot of people are really wanting to see, and that's Elden Ring, which is the newest From Software game that has the lore and the story stuff penned by George R.R. Martin, who wrote the Game of Thrones books. And, you know, I've never really been a fan of Game of Thrones, but I understand that he is a really talented author, so I'm sure he brings some really good stuff to the table. And what with the game being developed by From Software, I think it's going to be a really cool sort of match. I think it's going to work really well, especially with George's knowledge of medieval history and medieval fantasy. I think it's going to be really good. There's been some leaks and some stuff showing the gameplay and a few sort of internal trailers that From Software used to show their staff, you know, what they're working towards. I've looked at it and I think, yeah, that's definitely a Souls game. It's just so, I don't want to say typical because that makes it sound kind of boring, but what I mean is when you look at those leaked videos, you can kind of see the Souls DNA in there. They even use the same opening door animation, and I guarantee you we're going to hear some same sound effects, which is fine, nothing wrong with that at all. It's quite a cool thing actually to hear it in multiple games. As far as I understand it, it seems to be heading towards a sort of open world structure, so I'm not really sure how that's going to work. But having said that, Dark Souls 1 is, while kind of linear, it's still structured in such a way that it's kind of an open world. You can't really go everywhere, of course, but, you know, you can walk from one place to the next, you know, pretty seamlessly. So if they can work that kind of feeling into a true open world game, I think it could be absolutely amazing, especially with the amount of world building that From Software and Miyazaki, the director, do. It could just be incredible. I mean, the amount of storytelling opportunities that there would be in an open world structured game by FromSoft just kind of boggles my mind, really, because if you think about some of the levels they've created over the years, they're very layered. There's a lot of depth to the structure of the levels that From Software create, or the areas, I should say. And just imagine that if that was an open world, it's almost endless what they could do. And I hope it doesn't get lost in that open world monotony kind of thing. I don't think it will, but obviously there's a chance it could, although I would imagine that Miyazaki and the team at From Software are massively aware of that kind of pitfall and will do everything they can to avoid it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to Elden Ring. I just really want to see more of it at this point. Next, let's talk about Sega. Recently in the news, there's been a few sort of articles talking about how they are thinking of rebooting certain franchises, those being Space Channel 5, Crazy Taxi, and Jet Set Radio. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I absolutely love Jet Set Radio. It was one of my first loves in games, which sounds kind of silly, but it was. Jet Set Radio for the Dreamcast was I was going to say life-changing. It sounds so dramatic, but it really was one of those games. It was one of my first intros into sort of Japanese culture, funnily enough. Well, that and Shenmue. But Jet Set Radio was always one of my favorite games. And at the time, when I was a kid, when I was actually younger, I was skating as well. Not skateboarding, but actually inline skating, sliding on the rails and all that kind of stuff. I really, really, really enjoyed that game because it just hit at the right time for me. And then when Jet Set Radio Future came to the Xbox, the original one, I was, again, in love with that game too. And I just wish we had a remaster of that one. I can't believe Xbox has just let it go for so long, and Sega. But either way, I'd love to see remasters or new entries in all of these series. Space Channel 5 is not one that I'm that bothered about. It's a sort of dancing rhythm game, if I remember correctly. Never really been into those, but I think it would be cool for it to get another go round. I don't see why it shouldn't. And again, Crazy Taxi was an amazing game back in the day. Very basic, not a lot of what you would call content, but it was kind of infinitely replayable. It was just always fun. It was that arcadey style taxi racing, really fast driving, just picking up a fare and taking it to where it needed to go. That was literally the game, and it was really, really fun. So I think it'd be really cool to see some of these come back. And while we're on the subject of Sega, I'd really like to see some sort of Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2 remaster. I don't think we're going to get that, at least not right now. And if we did, I kind of have a feeling it would be an Xbox exclusive, just because of the fact that Phantasy Star, the new one, the new modern version, Phantasy Star Online 2, I think it's called, is on the Xbox and PC, and it's not on the PlayStation, so I think that's probably what would happen there. But either way, it would be really cool to see any of these games get a new lease on life, at least in my opinion. And I suppose while we're on the subject of Xbox, I would like to see them show off, anything, just something. Please God, show something. I mean, they really need some games. Don't get me wrong, Game Pass is doing very, very well for them, but I think they need some actual heavy-hitting games and ones that are just good. Not just okay, but good. I hadn't actually mentioned this, but I recently sold my Xbox Series S. I just wasn't using it. It was just collecting dust. I had it for the week before the PlayStation 5 released, which is sort of how it worked over here in the UK. The PlayStation 5 came out a little bit later here, but I played it solidly for about a week because, I didn't have my PlayStation 5 yet. But once the PS5 got into my house, I just never touched the Xbox again, and I just thought, look, somebody else could be using this, someone that really wanted one, and I basically sold it for retail. I didn't charge any more except for shipping. So, someone else got one that really wanted it, and I think that's cool. I wasn't using it, and I just think if Xbox pull their finger out and actually, show something off that's interesting that I actually want, then cool, yeah, I'll maybe pick up a Series X down the line. Maybe if they redesign it and make a slim version down the line, who knows. But as of right now, there's just nothing on the Xbox that I want, and I'd like to see more in Halo Infinite, if I'm honest, but again, that really isn't doing it for me these days. Halo kind of ended for me when 4 came along, because 4 and 5 were, in my opinion, pretty dull. I didn't like them at all. The same goes, funnily enough, for Gears of War. When 4 and 5 for that came along, I wasn't keen on those. So I think it's just the new direction they went in. They didn't really feel like the games that they were. And that's okay, new people will pick them up at this point in time. Like the new generation of players that are younger right now will pick up 4 and 5, and they'll be maybe their first game. Do you know what I mean? So, and that's okay. It just, things change, people change, and the direction that the games have gone in has really changed, and it's just not for me, so I don't play it. I'm not going to go around and say that they're garbage, because they're not. They're fine. It's just not for me anymore, and that's okay. And keeping with the Xbox theme, I would actually really like to see some information on Fable. Now, as far as I understand it, the new Fable is probably something like 3-4 years away still at this point, and it's being developed by, I think, Playground Games, if I'm not mistaken, who are the people that do the Forza Horizon games and the Forza Motorsport games, which I also like, by the way. So I have faith that they can do it justice, but I'm not sure where this Fable's going to go, because a lot of people didn't like how modern it was becoming with the guns in it and stuff. So I'm wondering if they'll actually do a massive prequel, like before any of the stuff that happened in Fable 1. That would be kind of interesting. But will we get any information on it? I doubt it, but it would be cool to see. And still, yet again sticking with the Xbox, it was confirmed recently, I believe 100% confirmed, that Starfield is going to be exclusive to the Xbox and the PC now, which, if you didn't know, Starfield is Bethesda's new big thing. It's supposed to be one of their big three, the Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and now Starfield. Starfield being a more futuristic space kind of thing. And I don't know, I was hoping it would come to PlayStation, but I kind of don't care that it's not. And that's bad, right? That's not a good thing. I just don't really care because Bethesda haven't been, well, Bethesda in a long time. They haven't been up to the same sort of standard and quality, which is true for many, many different development studios at the moment. But Bethesda has really been bad for quite a while now, and I just frankly don't even care about Starfield. If it comes out and it's good, well then great. But I'm not that bothered about it. If I have an Xbox Series X down the line, like I said, then maybe I'll play it one day. But at the moment, with not knowing too much about it, fair enough, I'm not interested at the moment. I'm not really, clamoring for information. And sadly, it really hurts me to say, but the same sort of goes for Elder Scrolls 6. I'm really not that bothered by it at the moment because I just don't trust Bethesda to do it justice, to do the series justice. I just don't trust them. But we'll have to see how it goes. So another game that I think could be really interesting, or on the flip side could be absolutely god-awful, is Hogwarts Legacy, the new Harry Potter RPG. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this works. I'd really like to see some actual gameplay, with like the HUD on and everything, just so you could see how it would play when it was in your hands as a customer, and just to get more details in general about how the world works, how the crafting and the RPG mechanics work, and all that kind of stuff. I'd like to know if it's got some sort of bond system, like friend system, like how you had to go to class in Persona, stuff like that. Be really cool if it has all that. And honestly, Harry Potter when I was a kid was not something that I was really that into. I was never super enthralled by anything that it had when I was younger. I was more of a Lord of the Rings kind of kid, but after meeting my wife about 15 years ago at this point, she absolutely loved it when I met her. And over the years, we've watched the movies a lot, and I've started reading the books, and I've really come to appreciate it and really love it, regardless of what you think of the author. I know a lot of people don't like her, and really I'm just kind of indifferent to it. I don't really care. I can generally separate the art from the artist. There's plenty of good art and good music and all sorts of things that have been created by people that are absolute assholes, so it is what it is. But yeah, I'd like to see more about it. I'd like to see more details, and I'm hoping that it's going to be a fun game, and I'm hoping it doesn't get delayed again. So moving over to Nintendo for a little bit, I'd like to see some more information and some extended gameplay on the Pokemon Legends Arceus game, because that's the kind of game I've wanted for years. Honestly, back in the day when Pokemon Colosseum came out for the GameCube, I was kind of hoping that was going to be what Arceus looks to be, if that makes any sense. Pokemon Colosseum was kind of like a mix between Pokemon Stadium and a mainline Pokemon game. It wasn't quite either. It had some very linear, towns that you could go to. You weren't really free to do much like you are in the other games, but it was cool. It was a good game, and I'm hoping that Arceus is going to be that full-on open world Pokemon RPG. But I'm also a little bit worried that because it's a prequel, and set quite a long time ago within the Pokemon world itself, I feel like they might cut a lot of modern day conveniences out of the game for story reasons. That stuff didn't happen yet. That stuff wasn't invented in the Pokemon universe yet. While that's cool thematically, I think it might end up being a very basic game to the point that it may be boring, and I hope that's not true. I'm thinking that could be something that would happen, but we'll have to see how it goes. And also, when I was watching the videos that they did show for it already, I noticed that the frame rate did not look like it was holding up well, and obviously this is early footage, the game is not out yet. I don't know how well the Switch is going to hold up performance-wise with this one. I mean, of course, if they release it alongside a Switch Pro or whatever it's going to be called, if it even exists, we don't really know yet. If they release it alongside a more powerful Switch and it's able to do, 60 FPS at 720p, 1080p, that kind of thing for a Switch, I think that's fine. But again, nothing's set in stone, so we will just have to wait and see. I don't think we really need too much more information on the remakes of Diamond and Pearl, the Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl ones, because really we kind of know everything about it. We've sort of seen what it is and what it does. Maybe there'll be some little things that they'll announce for it, some little extras that are just available in the game that weren't there before. I don't know, something like that. And I know some people weren't really keen on the art style, the sort of chibi look, but I don't know, I kind of like it. It just looks like a more up-to-date version of the originals, quite frankly, and I'm okay with that. And despite Pokemon Sword and Shield being kind of awful in my opinion, I'll still be picking these up. This next one might be a bit more of a pie in the sky kind of long shot really, but maybe we'll see something on Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. I don't know, maybe we will. Seems kind of unlikely considering that this remake's probably going to take about 15 years to be completely done. But the thing is, at the moment, I've not actually played the remake. I owned the original on the PS1 back in the day, but I was relatively young and I did not understand that game when I was a kid. I remember playing it a bit, and as I say, I owned it, but I never got anywhere with it and I just didn't really play it very much. But when I saw the remake was more of a hack and slash type thing, I thought I'd give it a go, but I haven't played it yet. As I say, I have the game. I'm looking at it right now on my shelf. It is a sealed copy of the remake on PS4, but I thought I'd wait for the free PS5 upgrade to really get into it. Obviously, I know that you have to buy the Yuffie stuff separately or whatever else there is, but you do get the free upgrade, so that's kind of cool, and I'm just waiting for that. But the part 2, perhaps we'll get a teaser for it or something. Maybe it'll be an actual little cutscene or who knows, but it would be cool to see it, and I think a lot of people would love to see some sort of news on part 2, regardless of how small it was. And I'm not even a massive Final Fantasy fan, but I'd still be happy to see it, so here's hoping. And now I'm down to the last 2 games on my list that I wanted to discuss, and this one is BioShock 4. I'd really like any news on this, please, anything. I love the BioShock games, particularly the first one. 2 is great as well. Infinite, in some ways, ruins the story, but in some ways really makes it better. It's such a weird, divisive thing, that game. Sometimes I love it and sometimes I hate it, but it's still great. And BioShock was one of my probably all-time favorite first-person shooters. And it's funny because I've actually spoken before about how I can't deal with horror games or suspense, and BioShock definitely has some horror elements to it, but I always just saw it as a shooter RPG. I don't know why, it just never creeped me out. I mean, there was creepy areas, of course, but I was never really bothered by that game, or the second one, or the third one, so I was able to play those without any problems, and I absolutely love them. I've heard that the new BioShock is possibly, or I think it may have been confirmed, that they're going for an open world style with it. And again, a lot of games seem to be going open world, and just look at how that went with Dynasty Warriors 9. That game was an absolute abomination, and I just hope that going that way with BioShock won't ruin it, because really the narratives that they use and the way they structure them really need those tight kind of areas and linear story progression. I know there's some optional stuff here and there, but it really does need to be a more tight narrative, and I'm just worried about how that might come across in an open world. It may just get completely lost, but who knows, they might be able to do a sort of semi-open world where it's not quite as open as you think. But I really just want to know what the world's going to be, what the setting is, the theme, the characters. I just want to know something about BioShock 4, so I'm really hoping to see that this year. And the last one, please don't laugh at me, is Senran Kagura 7, which would be the newest entry in the long-running fan service kind of series. They're usually hack and slash Dynasty Warriors style games with a lot of anime girls and anime fan service, if you know what I'm talking about. And yeah, okay, these games are kind of a meme and they're kind of silly, and all the jokes about I am a man of culture and all that. I use that joke all the time. I just like the games, and I'm not going to apologize for liking anime girls. I don't care. They're not real people. It doesn't matter, at least to me, and I have absolutely no problem with fan service anime or fan service games. It doesn't bother me. It's all just digital pixels. They're not real people, so doesn't bother me. I know some people try to blame these kind of games for all sorts of atrocities, and it's just not correct. It just isn't. Logically, it just doesn't follow. Not getting into all the political kind of crap. The games themselves have always been pretty fun to me. I mean, they did a pinball one, there's been a sort of dating simulator one, and then, as I say, the hack and slash ones, and I found them really fun. I like the characters. I have all the collector's editions of these, and I know it's okay because my wife bought me the collector's edition, so I know it's okay. But yeah, I like these kind of things, and I'd really like to see this one get some sort of news. I believe it was having trouble with getting past censorship. I believe it was being developed for the PS4 or maybe PS5 as well, I'm not entirely sure, but As far as I understand it, they were trying to censor the game too much, and they've had to go back to square one and really sort of, redo stuff because people were crying about it to them, and it's just, I really hope that isn't true. I don't know if that's 100% confirmed, but that's what I've read, and I just hope that maybe it won't come to that, and it will still come out, and it will still be as, crude and lewd and all that kind of stuff as it was supposed to be, because, I mean, really, who cares? Who cares what's in this game? If it's, you know what you used to do? This is going to make me sound really old. Do you know what I used to do back in the day when I didn't like something? I didn't engage with it. It's as simple as that. If you don't like the content of a game, move on and do something else. Or, just don't play it. It's a really simple concept. It's easy to do. So, I mean, I don't mean to rant here, but it just annoys me when these kind of things happen. Because just because you're not into it doesn't mean it can't exist. But I think I'll end on these last two things I want to say, and these are just two games I'm really not interested in, just to kind of put this here. I know God of War Ragnarok and Breath of the Wild 2 are probably going to get shown. There's probably going to be some sort of cinematic or perhaps even gameplay if we're lucky for two of these. They're not for me. These two games are really not something I care about. I did play the original, the God of War on PS4. I did beat that game, and I thought it was fine. I didn't really love it, and I didn't really hate it. I found it okay. It's a good game, no doubt. It's well made, incredibly well made. It's one of those ones that just doesn't click for me. I liked it, but I would never replay it. And I'm not really interested in the second one. I'll probably play it when it's, goes down in price and I can get it cheap or something. And, Breath of the Wild is just not something I've been interested in. I didn't like the first one, so I probably won't ever pick up the second one. But yeah, that's pretty much my list of everything that I'm hoping to see or think we might see. And if any of you are interested in my thoughts on any other games that I might have missed, please leave them down in the comments and I'll try to reply to as many people as possible. All the links to everything I mentioned at the start of the video are in the description down below. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up or subscribe if you want to, and with all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.